All right, keeping the show rolling with one of my favorite guys to talk football with in the offseason when we run into each other at events, Field Yates from ESPN. Great job at the Senior Bowl last week.
Thank you, sir. I slipped at $25 to say that, just so people are aware. I think you have to disclose that these days.
We won't confirm if that's true or not, but I might need $25 after that craps table last night.
You're just making sure the local economy here in Vegas stays strong, right?
Why not? I made a donation. We'll just say that. You got to do
the
that.
Taxpayers, that's all.
Super Bowl week here. So Field was down in Mobile last week. Some great coverage. Nick was there as well.
Yep. Nick was on the draft beat for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Shrine and Senior, right?
Yeah, I was everywhere. Now we're here. It's a great time.
We got the draft figured out.
Yep.
What's your temperature right now with what the Bears should do?
You're talking about it number one, right?
Yeah, they do have the number one pick. Yeah. Unless they traded it in the last 20 minutes. It is interesting down here, though, just being on Radio Row and look, there's two teams playing in the Super Bowl, but the Bears seem to be like the next team of conversation.
All right, so do we want the so I tell people all the time that I've got we have a little bit of time to talk this out answer, and I've got my 25-second TV answer. Which one do you want?
Let's go with the talk it out.
Okay, let's talk it out.
I want to go deep with Field. Let's go deep down the field. Let's go.
Deep down the field. So the Bears have sort of like a 3 or 4 pronged plan ahead. Right now you got to start with this evaluation. You got to decide internally. You have to make an evaluation about what kind of player Justin Fields is. They've said things publicly, and certainly we've seen Justin on the field for a good chunk of 3 seasons. But the Bears are the only ones that know exactly how the Bears feel about Justin. Take that evaluation. If you believe that Justin is the kind of player that has a chance to become a full-time starter for a long time with you guys, the next part of the conversation is, all right, let's have a conversation with his representation. He's now extension eligible. That's one of the next dominoes that's going to fall for Justin, whether it's here in Chicago or somewhere else. And if you start to sort of throw numbers around and the representation and you are on the same page and you feel like Justin has a chance to be a long-time starter, that kind of makes the idea of keeping Justin that much more palatable. If you think he's a long-time starter, but you feel like the two sides are on, sort of different pages in terms of money-wise, that's going to influence the decision as well. Because if you feel like there's this gap that you can't bridge, that might make you feel a little bit more like you have to go down the quarterback route in the draft. Simultaneously to all this, you have to be doing your own evaluations of not just Caleb Williams, but the other quarterbacks in this class, and you have to decide, is one of these guys clearly the best? Most people believe it's Caleb Williams. I will be part of that group. But also Jaden Daniels, there's not anything he could have done this year to improve his draft stock more than what he did during his Heisman Trophy winning season at LSU. And then Drake May was built at quarterback factory, 6'4", 230 pounds, born to play quarterback. So you got to have that evaluation as well. And then you have to take it to the next step. All right, if you're going to take one of those, if you don't want to take one of those quarterbacks, what do the offers look like to move down? Are you going to get 3 first-round picks to move from 1 to 7 or 1 to 8? Because if you can get 3 first-round picks to go from 1 to 8, and you get to keep Justin Fields, and you feel like you've got a financial plan in place there, then you might have a chance to not just keep Justin Fields, but build around him in a pretty special way. You might have 2 first-round wide receivers joining him this upcoming year. Long, rambling answer, of course. I think it's a lot more nuanced, though, than trade Justin Fields or, hey, keep Justin Fields and take Marvin Harrison Jr. and just, be done with it. There's a lot that goes on over these next 2.5 months for Ryan Poles.
That's all great, Field. But in Chicago, you have to be on one team or the other. There is no nuance.
So if I had to plant my flag would be planted on do your best to get as much return you can for Justin Fields and take a quarterback number 1 overall.
So can we go in that direction with Field? Because I feel like you'll have a really good perspective on maybe – because one of the things I've been struggling with is just where should Justin Fields land if that's the road they go down. So I don't know if we want to talk through some situations.
Let's do it.
I'm like New England at 3. No.
I can't imagine they would be influenced to do it.
Instead of taking a –
if they view Justin as decidedly better than whoever they think the 3rd quarterback prospect is, actually the 2nd quarterback prospect, because let's just say, I'm just making this up, but let's say New England's board stacks up, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, all right? But if they feel like the only one out of those 3 that is a no doubt about it player is Caleb Williams, maybe, but I don't think Justin has done enough in 3 years to definitively say, based off what I've seen from those 3 guys, that that door you could go through with Jaden or Caleb or Drake is a lesser path than what you have with Justin Fields. So I think we're talking more about the teams that are not in the top 3, but also don't know if you can justify taking a quarterback at pick 8 if you're Atlanta, pick 12 if you're Denver, pick 13 if you're the Raiders. The Raiders obviously an interesting one because of the Luke Getsy connection. It either means that the Raiders are going to be extremely interested in a trade or completely turned off by a trade, right? Like I don't think Luke Getsy would go to Tom Telesco, their new GM, and be like, yeah, it'd be okay. He'd either be like, absolutely, let's do it, or he'd say, no way. Like, I think the problem last year was not me; it was actually Justin, right? I'm not trying to put words in Luke's mouth. I'm just saying, like, his stance on Justin's probably pretty strong one way or the other.
So let's go down that road just for a second.
Yep.
Because everyone likes to have the argument, like the Belichick-Brady, who was more important from your
one of the dumber arguments, right? That we waste time on.
But I think it's interesting when you go down to maybe I'm just a dumb person, which is completely on the table. But like I look at it like it's always the player, man. Like the player is going to drive what the coach wants to do here. But then it's also like, well, people in Chicago want to blame Luke Getsy for what happened to Justin.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to like slice the pie up, the quarterback's the most influential position in all of sports, but like Patriots scored 3 offensive touchdowns during their first Super Bowl run. 3, and Drew Bledsoe was responsible for one of them. So like, it's still a team sport. Their last Super Bowl, they scored 1 touchdown, right? It was a 1-yard rushing touchdown by Sonny Michel. Yeah. So it's still, listen, Brady is the undisputed GOAT. Belichick, to me, is the undisputed GOAT in their respective jobs. It's nice when you have 2 people at the peak of their powers working together. So I think for the Bears, like, to bring this back to the Justin conversation, is that, like, I do generally feel as though 3 years isn't enough of an evaluation, even though only 2 of them have been under the current leadership, right? Like, there's enough that you were able to see in year 1, if you're Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, even though you weren't actually in the building, to know, like, all right, at some point you have to be able to make a decision and plant your own flag. And, by the way, they don't pay GMs and head coaches to make the easy decisions. They pay them to make the difficult decisions. This is a difficult one. It's a good one to have because you might end up drafting an absolute star with that number 1 overall pick if you go quarterback. But if you move off from Justin, even if imperfect, if the guy you're replacing with busts, then people are going to look at that as a referendum on you. So it's a complicated one. I land, again, to reiterate, on the do your best to get as much of a package for Justin as you can, and then you end up with, I think, Caleb Williams at number 1 overall, or whoever you evaluate as the best prospect there. But it's not without risk. I mean, it obviously has significant reward potential as well, but it is not without risk.
So, Phil, I mean, we've been talking about it. Like, we have 3 years of work with Justin, and we still don't even know exactly where he is as a prospect, how much he can grow. So for teams that maybe are interested in trading, you have to think about the contract. You have to think about what's still the upside. So what is the reason that teams are going to make that gamble on a guy like that? There's still unknowns with him.
So a couple of things. First of all, supply and demand is always going to factor into the quarterback market. So if you're the Raiders at 13, and it seems clear that Jimmy Garoppolo's not part of the picture, right? And beyond that, Aiden O'Connell, I don't think is a guy that you can make a deep playoff, maybe even a playoff push with, right? Like, I think he's sort of below the quarterback Mendoza line. At pick 13, though, are you willing to roll the dice on a rookie quarterback? So there's the supply and demand issue. Like, there's only one Kirk Cousins and only one Baker Mayfield to sign in free agency this offseason. After those two, like, the list is fairly uninspiring. Moreover, and this is the thing that I think we talk about way too infrequently, but is way too prominent. There are various coaches and GMs around the league that know that if I don't win this year, I'm gone. And so, is it desperate? Perhaps. Is it necessary? Yes, also. So, like, if you're sitting there and you're like, the Raiders are a bad example because they just hired a new head coach and a new general manager, but if you're a team out there where you're coming off of a disappointing season and you're worried that the quarterback could be the spot that prevents you from winning next year, and you see an upgrade, even if the upgrade is relatively nominal, you might say, you know what? I got to keep my job, and I'm going to make this trade because I think I have an improved chance of winning, and that improved chance of winning could be me sticking around for the next 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, but it's better than the possibility of feeling like you have no lifeline in 2024 and then being a free agent, so to speak, as a coach or a GM at the beginning of 2025.
Well, and therein lies the bad organization. If your guys are in position where they're making decisions to save their job versus the long term,
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
if you're the New York Giants right now, there was some speculation, and I don't think it never materialized, and I don't know how close it was or wasn't, but you come off of a great first year with Brian Daboll as your head coach, and Joe Shane as your GM. Then you have a big step back. You've got Daniel Jones with an ACL tear and 2 neck injuries on the ledger, and he's got a massive contract guarantee for this year. You're not going to be able to totally rid yourself of that. But if you're uncertain about him, and you feel like there's a chance that if things don't go well this year, what does our future look like? Are you motivated to stand pat and just do nothing at the quarterback spot and just say we got to find a way to build around that? Or what's your mindset? Isn't that's just one team, and there are others that fit into that category. Don't you have to act more urgently?
I think so. I think there's a lot of teams like that. Not exactly the same thing because I don't think the urgency, from a being on the hot seat standpoint, is quite the same. But even in the same division of the Bears, the Vikings are interesting to me.
Fascinating. Yeah.
What are they going to do? They just bring Kirk back, or at some point do they got to make a move for a younger guy? And they see Justin up close twice a year. What do they think about it?
Yeah, I would be surprised if Minnesota does not desperately want Kirk back, but it takes 2 to tango. Kirk is an outstanding businessman. He obviously has done very well in the free agency market in the past, and he is at the career juncture where he may say, something to me. I think we got a peek behind the curtain during that quarterback show on Netflix that Minnesota means a lot to him. It's very much home for him. Yeah. He might say, I can get 2 years, $45 million a year to go somewhere else, or I could do 2 for $40 a year in Minnesota and not upset the apple cart, so to speak, in terms of life. But is there an obvious, easy decision to make? No, there isn't. It's just a way that, again, these are why the GMs are making a lot of money to make these decisions. If you don't have Kirk Cousins, though, rock in a hard place. Right, I mean, they're too far down the draft board to take a first-round quarterback without any. Number 11, you're not getting one of those first 3. So if you're not taking one of those first 3, are you sure that J.J. McCarthy isn't decided upgrade over Kirk Cousins, or are you saying, hey, we're taking J.J. and we're kind of taking a step back here and acknowledging that we're kind of at this crossroads is too strong of a characterization, but we're at this different juncture of our organization than you would have thought 2 years ago when we went, whatever it was, 13-4, made the playoffs, won the division.
Let's just say, for argument's sake, the Chiefs win the Super Bowl 24-10.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy the quarterback of the Niners next year?
I think so, but God, it's going to make for some great debate on television, huh?
Right. Especially depending on the context of the game too, and what happens, especially in the fourth quarter.
The hard part for them, and it's a good problem to have, is that they're obviously so stacked with talent that the resources. You only have. I can't remember who first made this comment. It might have been Mike Mayock when he was a Raiders GM, and he was talking about, I think, preceding the Khalil Mack trade to Chicago, talking about how you can only have 1, maybe 2 quarterback contracts on the books, right? The 49ers don't have a starting quarterback contract on the books, but Trent Williams, top of the left tackle market. Deebo Samuel, top of the wide receiver market, or close to it. Nick Bosa, top of the DN market. And Fred Warner, top of the linebacker market, right? They've got a lot of guys.
George Kittle,
top of the tight end market. And you've got guys that are coming around the corner who are going to be extension eligible soon. Christian McCaffrey, running back, et cetera. That you kind of have to say to yourself, if things go poorly on Sunday, and if we feel like there is a quarterback upgrade that we can attain, it's not all right, we can just go get Kirk Cousins and everything's hunky-dory. It's all right, we're adding Kirk Cousins, and by the way, in the process of that, we might have to cut 1 or 2 of those guys, or we can't keep a Brandon Ayuk, or whatever it might be. So there's only so many resources available.
And I can't help, my mind wanders sometimes just picturing Justin Fields on the 49ers and what the hell that would look like with just all that help. I don't think that would ever happen, but I'm just sometimes that's just where my mind wanders.
I will say this, and the Justin thing, you got to sort of untangle that web one way or the other. But it's easy when, listen, this is one of the things, when you're not in a specific market covering a single team for most of your time, it's easier to say these kind of things. But the Bears actually are relatively flush with optionality here, right? How many bad contracts are on the books right now? Not too many, right? Maybe 1 or 2, right? That you're not even bad contracts, but contracts that you'd want to manipulate a tiny bit. They have, I don't think, any money that's been kicked down the road. I don't think they have a single.
They're as clean as you can find right now in the NFL.
As clean as you could be from a salary cap perspective, from a draft capital perspective, and from a nice blend of young, non-extension eligible guys. They've hit on some draft picks of late, And most of the guys that are being paid a lot of money, it's like, yeah, DJ Moore's worth $19 million a year. Montez Sweat's worth $24 million a year. So they just got to get over that hump, which I think is definitely attainable with a good offseason. But relative to some other teams, like maybe Minnesota finishes with a better record next year. But like Minnesota's complicated right now. Those are complicated things you got to figure out that are a little bit less complicated than Chicago right now.
You do when you're in Mobile, you go barbecue or seafood?
Seafood.
Yeah, me too.
But which is weird because I live on the East Coast, the Northeast. Like I grew up in Massachusetts. Like seafood is everything there. But still, like
it's different.
Stick to what
there.
you know, though.
It's different.
Right?
You get different kind of seafood.
You can go crawfish instead of lobster.
Yeah, they had some catfish around here yesterday that I almost
just right
still
over
there.
Yeah,
I didn't know Las Vegas was a big catfish
I was going to say
place.
catfish in the desert. I don't know about that one.
Not so sure.
And maybe the worst piece of sushi I've ever had last night at the media party. I never spit out food, but that happened. I just want to look through history. When I don't know if I ever mentioned to you, I used to work in Kansas City,
baby.
That's right, exactly.
Carman, I think you might have been the first person to have me on your radio show.
When we started the meteoric rise,
he
not
takes
me,
credit for
but
everything.
I'm
He
just
takes
saying,
credit for
I
everything.
saw it happening. Like the first time I was like, that's the smoothest talking dude of all time. He's going to be on ESPN in 5 seconds. And Carrington Harrison and Nick Wright and everybody else was like, let's get Field on. I'm like, Field's going to be gone in 5 seconds. This guy's too good. And he was.
Well, I take a lot of pride in it. It's just cool. And I'm certainly 5 out of 5 here. But it was really cool. It's like been fun to see that. I call it the rookie class when I was hired in Kansas City. Ryan Poles. We all got hired relatively within like a month or two of each other. Ryan Poles. Mike Borgonzi, who's still with the Chiefs, the assistant GM. Nick Sirianni, of course, Eagles head coach. Brant Tillis, who is now the new EVP of the Panthers. So him and Dan Morgan are kind of running the show there. So a lot of people that like to see those guys all crushing, it's pretty cool.
That is awesome. That's awesome.
Great.
You have those connections too, man.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Field, always love talking with you.
Right back to you all. I think I've hit like 2 out of maybe 3 of the various All City Network shows.
Let's go.
Dude, what's killing me though? Freaking Bean and Blackburn, who are my buddies from like 15 years in Boston, won't let me on their show.
Wow.
No chaos. I am all chaos. I want to go there
Wow.
and bring some chaos. I might just crash the show one day.
I was about to say,
Do it.
like, you haven't done the hockey show, but you really should be on that show.
You guys have seen the video I've seen a couple nights ago?
That was a big video.
Yeah.
Hilarious. God,
Yeah.
those guys. Don't let them see this clip for me telling them they're really funny and talented and handsome and all those things. So I know. Don't let them hear that.
Thanks, Field.
Good to see you guys.
Yep.
Be well.
Appreciate it, brother.
All righty.
Field Yates and
Mock Draft 1.0 drops next Wednesday. If you guys want to see
let's
it.
go.
Yeah.
Let's
I
go.
bet the Bears
Always
taking a
excited for
kicker.
that.
a kicker?
Not true.
No.
Punter?
Unless there's is there a Justin Tucker out there?
Hey, Tory Taylor, number
Tory
one.
Taylor,
I would make the argument.
He was dropping bombs in
Yes.
Mobile.
Yeah.
So good.
He's just really good.
The gap between him and the next best punter is definitely the biggest gap between any player and the next best player to his position. in the
Field
draft.
knows.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
100%. That's a good way to think about it. All right.
All right, guys. Be well. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Field.
Field.
We all silly like the mayor.